Perfect. Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's live stream with the Moving to Canada team. My name is Rachel, and I'll be your host for today's session. Let's just wait a couple minutes for people to trickle in. But yes, how's everyone doing today? How are y'all feeling?
I'm feeling okay. I might have a coughing fit halfway through because I'm suffering from a little bit of a sore throat. So excuse me, guys, if I do. But otherwise, I'm looking forward to meeting with our IEC community. I always love seeing some of the questions they ask and kind of learning about where they are on their journey. So, yep, looking forward to it.
Perfect. Yeah, with that, let's get into today's session. So, just a brief introduction. I'm joined by my amazing colleagues here. If you can kindly raise your hands when mentioned. First up, we have Rory Spillon. He is the CEO of Movie to Canada and Outpost Recruitment, and he is a licensed recruiter bringing deep expertise in career advice and job search. Good to have you here, Rory.
Thank you.
Up next, we have Rebecca Major. She is a regulated Canadian immigration consultant and is our operations manager here at Moving to Canada. Hi, Rebecca.
Hello. Hi, Rachel. Hi, everyone.
And finally, we have Stephanie Ford, who is our head of content strategy and is one of our talented writers here at Moving to Canada. You've probably seen our faces pop up here once in a while, usually to share immigration tips or talk about what's new and timely in the world of Canadian immigration. But today's session is going to be a little more relaxed. We're focusing on your questions about the IEC or the International Experience Canada program. So for those of you watching, whether you're already in the pool, recently got an invite, planning to apply next season, or you're just curious about how the program works, you're in the right place. So yeah, hopefully we're here to bring some clarity and help you make sense of it all. Now, before we jump in, I guess we'd love to know where everyone's tuning in from. And also we'd like to know what stage of your IEC journey you're at. So for those of you watching, kindly drop it in the comments below. And do let us know, like, are you waiting for an invitation? Have you already got your invite and are working on your work permit application? Or are you someone that is preparing for the next IEC season? So feel free to drop it in the comments below. We always love to see where our community is tuning from, where our community is at, and how pretty much everyone is progressing. We do have a couple comments here. Just want to give a quick shout out to Zhao. So hello. Do let us know where you're tuning in from. We also have Ray. Hi there. I'm from Scotland, hoping to live in Canada with my partner. I'm just in the pool waiting for an ITA, also trying to get a work permit at the same time. And then for Zhao, he also got his work permit issued and arrived in Canada via IEC on September 10th, very recently. So congratulations. We also have, is Akil? Hello, I'm from Trinidad and Tobago, and I'm just learning about the program. Perfect. We'll definitely give you guys a 411 about what the IEC program is about and any other questions that you may have about the process. Now, very quickly, while we wait for everyone to arrive and get settled in, we also just want to thank today's headline sponsor, Scotiabank. I will go into a little bit more detail about Scotiabank's newcomer offer shortly, but we wanted to note that today's webinar is brought to you for free thanks to them. And I guess before we dig into the rest of the content, we do need to read through this legal disclaimer. So this webinar was provided for information purposes only. It should not be relied upon as investment advice or guarantees about the future, nor should it be considered a recommendation to buy or sell. So any information, advice, or recommendations provided are solely those of the presenters today, namely Rebecca, Steph, Rory, and myself, and they do not necessarily reflect the views of Scotiabank or its affiliates. So for specific questions about the products and services offered by Scotiabank, please contact a Scotiabank advisor. We'll put a link to speak with a Scotiabank advisor in the comments below. So let me actually just pull that up very quickly right now. It's right on here. And I'll be sharing it also on the live feed just for everyone's heads up.
Did you want to quickly go through the technical limitation for the links on LinkedIn as well?
Yes. Yes. So currently, for the viewers watching, our live stream is being streamed on Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube. Although we've just learned that there are some limitations to seeing our comments or like engaging on the live feed on some platforms, specifically LinkedIn. So if you are tuning in from LinkedIn and you do want to see the links that we're sharing on the live feed, quick workaround would be to just hop on to our YouTube link, which I will share very shortly, or you can like stay. And this video will also be uploaded right away on our YouTube platform. So any of the links and info that we make a note of on this live stream will be found in our description. So just be aware of that. Perfect. Let me just quickly grab that YouTube link right now. All right, Steph, would you like to move on and talk about the Scotiabank StartRight Program?
Yeah, I'm happy to jump in here and give your voice a little bit of a break before the rest of it. So as Rachel mentioned, Scotiabank is the sponsor of today's webinar. Scotiabank's support really means a lot to us at Moving to Canada, since it means that we're able to bring you content, including today's webinar, for free, but there is a lot of other content that they've helped us bring to you. As you can see on the slide here, Scotiabank has a program for newcomers called the Scotiabank StartRight Program. The details are available on the slide, and we'll put a link. I think we did just put a link to the program page in the comments so you can learn more about it. But broadly speaking, it offers newcomers no-fee international money transfers, no monthly checking account fees in your first year, and the opportunity to earn up to $500 with a Scotiabank preferred package and a registered account. Those features are really handy. That it's features of the Scotiabank StartRight program that are tailored for newcomers to help you settle in smoothly, especially during that first year. Okay, with that in mind, and before we dig into question time, I did really want to just quickly go over where we are in the IEC 2025 season, and then Rebecca will jump into what to do if you've missed your shot this season, because I guess, spoiler, it is no longer accepting applications for 2025. So far, we've seen over 100,000 invitations, and potentially, hopefully, around 1,000 or more this coming week. 100,000 is a great number of invitations for people hoping to come to Canada through the IEC program this year. But maybe surprisingly for some people, it is it's a smaller number than what we saw last year. I dug through the data that we collected on last year's season, and there were almost 125,000 overall season invitations last year. And we saw 1,600 in the last week of the 2024 IEC season. So we're trending a smidge slower in terms of invitations this year than last year. But that's not shocking in the overall context of Canadian immigration at the moment. Canada is trying to reduce its overall volumes of temporary resident levels. So yeah, there was a noticeable decrease this year. And we can get into what that means for what you need to do for next year if you haven't already received a work permit or invitation. On that note, Rebecca, I'll hand it over to you.
Best unmute myself before I start talking. So thanks for that recap, Steph. So the IEC pools for 2025 are now closed. They closed on Monday morning. So what that means is that you can no longer enter the IEC pools for this year. And if you haven't received an invitation yet, the last week to receive that invitation is actually this week. So normally IICC update their numbers on Friday. So on Friday, we'll be able to see the final number of invitations issued over 2025. The pools will reopen for the 2026 season. The pools normally open early to late December. It's like ranges. I think last year it was around the 8th of December. Prior years it's been later in December. So we expect them to open sometime in December, but the first invitations will not take place until sometime in January. Generally, what happens is they announce the program or the pools are open. Candidates for, say, 4 to 5 weeks can submit their profile to the IEC pools, and then ISCC will start selecting candidates on a lottery basis from those pools. We did see a number of pools fill up really fast last year. So what happens now is obviously there's going to be a number of people that haven't received an invitation from 2025. Those people will likely immediately enter the pools when the program does open in 2026. So programs like the French Working Holiday Pool, the Chile Working Holiday Pool will fill up fast. We recommend that you get in fast. You get in early if you haven't been successful in receiving your invitation. Get your profile in as soon as you can. Taking a look at the UK program, I think we do have a couple of people from the UK joining us today. Early on in the year when 2025 first opened, it had excellent odds for many months. It's only recently turned to like very low odds. So getting in early can really, really help. Another takeaway is that if you are in a really competitive pool, like the French Working Holiday Pool, or really any working holiday which has kind of got in demand, try consider looking for the young professionals pool, but you will need a job offer for that one. So takeaways, 2025 is now closed, but that's not to say that you have kind of missed your chance. 2026 will likely open in a couple of months' time. Oh, Rachel, you're muted.
Whoops. Yeah, perfect. Now, I guess we quickly touched on what you can do now, but here are just some relevant links to prepare for the next IEC season. So we definitely have a lot of relevant pages regarding the IEC program. So if some of these terms seem like new to you, you can definitely read about the program types, the process, even the required documents on our dedicated IEC page. I'll be sharing those links on the chat. Also, just learn from the trends. We regularly update our IEC updates, so you can review everything that happened this year, and so you can plan early once the pool reopens. And of course, we also have our Moving to Canada newsletter. So definitely join that and subscribe to get notified the moment the IEC 2026 season opens. And so you can receive weekly immigration updates and news around that.
Mm-hmm. Steph, I don't know if you remember, it was France. I think the French Working Holiday Program was kind of oversubscribed immediately. So before there was even the first invitations, there was more applicants that had submitted their profile than there were spots available.
Yeah, it was the French Working Holiday, and I think the Chilean Working Holiday had thousands of people sign up even in December. So your pool can be quite competitive before the first draw of the year.
Exactly. And what's interesting, this happens around a time where we're waiting for immigration levels planning. And so immigration levels planning, just like super very, very high level, is where the government kind of tell us how many applications they want to accept per category. In in 2024 to 2025, there was a decrease in allocations for IEC spaces. We're not sure what it's going to look like for 2026. They only release that information really when the program opens. So staying up to date with IEC news is super important if that's the route you want to take to come to Canada.
Yeah, and I think if you want to stay in Canada, staying up to date on all immigration changes, not just what's happening in IEC, can also be a real game changer. Because at the moment, if you're coming in with, your 2 years of work, potentially 1 year of work, depending on where you're from, using that to the absolute fullest is going to be so important if you want to stay in Canada permanently.
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
All right. Moving on. Now, one of the things that we often get questions about, especially from those getting ready to travel or activate their IEC work permit, is health insurance. It's such an important part of your document checklist, and it's something that you really want to get sorted out before you arrive in Canada. With that, I'd like to bring back on stage Rory. Perhaps could you share any key health insurance tips that you'd like with our viewers? Also, just touch on some reminders on what to look for in a policy, or even bring up some IEC common mistakes that people make when getting their coverage set up.
Of course. First point is it's mandatory. I saw a post from a very confused IEC participant yesterday saying, hey, I have a job arranged. I'm going to have health coverage through my employer. Why do I have to pay for health insurance? Sadly, it's Canada protecting itself in the event of serious injury to you. Sometimes that could be death or life-threatening thing. If you need to be repatriated to your country, that would not be covered by your employer's health insurance. So just to remind people, this is mandatory. There is no way around it. Like buying insurance and canceling it after you arrive is illegal, and not having it on arrival will mean you're not allowed enter, right? Just because it's not always checked doesn't mean you should take the chance as well. So it's kind of something that IEC participants are annoyed about. It's a costly item. It can cost anywhere from, Canadian dollars. It can cost anywhere from 800 to sometimes up to 2,000, depending on winter coverage, what a location you're coming from as well. But sadly, there's no way around it. You take a huge risk of not being admitted to Canada, and that would be a huge waste of time. The validity you've mentioned there is you will get a work permit for the same validity of your health insurance. So if you only have health insurance for 3 months or 1 year, it can be very wasteful. You'll get a work permit to match that. There is no going back. The documents you have on arrival they will not be changed because you decided that I do like Canada, or it was a trial and I'd love to stay on further. I have a 2-year work permit, but you only granted me 1 year because of my health insurance. So cheaping out on health insurance does not pay. Please think about the fact that you will love it here. There's so much to do. You're trying to adapt to a new country, and just really try to think long-term in that regard. The biggest tip I would give people is read the fine print. You need to become an expert. These are sometimes overwhelming legal documents. You need to read it. If a policy is too good to be true, it's probably because it has lots of exclusions. And if you break those exclusions, for example, like some policies, cheaper policies will restrict you to traveling outside Canada twice during your 2 years. That's a massive restriction. You probably came here to travel the Pacific Northwest. You might also want to travel to Mexico to go on a sun holiday. Just give yourself the options. Read the exclusions very carefully, and just beware that cheaper policies have a lot of exclusions. In the similar realm, some of the more recommended policies will offer a lot more than just the mandatory health insurance. To give you an example, the coverage limits can range hugely. A premium policy will offer more comprehensive cover. One of our partners, Best Code, will actually provide access to telehealth, which can be extremely handy when you're trying to get access to prescriptions. So depending on your medical history, your kind of typical requirements, get a few quotes. We've built a quote engine to help people get quotes for both Let's Live or Best Quote. We also recommend True Traveler, depending on your jurisdiction. Get a number of quotes, compare them very carefully. Try to understand why they cost so much or why they cost so little, and that'll really help you make the right choice. But please don't make a decision based on it was the cheapest policy, because sadly that can have a very unhappy ending for people, because you realize that you paid for something, you broke the exclusion, it's no longer valid, and now you're in kind of no man's land again. Because if you do break an arm skiing, or you're climbing, or doing some of these extracurricular sports that are more common in Canada, it can cost you $20,000 to $30,000 for a hospital admission to break your arm. So you can rack up medical costs very quickly in Canada. And remember, this is for your protection. Canada's trying to protect you from ultimately having a Fund Me campaign to raise funds for you in the event that you're bankrupt and you can't pay for your hospital treatment and you need to move home from Canada. So we've seen a lot of sad stories over the last 14 years. So just read the article very carefully, grab a few quotes, think about the exclusions, think if they fit your criteria, and just go for it and enjoy it, and just arrive in Canada with the peace of mind that you are covered for any eventuality.
You know how I like telling stories. I've got a story. So when I came on the IEC in 2010, I'm showing my age, I didn't even think about sport, like winter sports. It's not something that even crossed my mind, but I went skiing. Obviously, looking back, that was really irresponsible of me because I didn't have the coverage to go skiing. But it's really hard also to think about the possible scenarios you need. So that's why try and read about it, go from other people's experiences, and trust us when we say things will crop up that you won't anticipate right now. And so that's why it's always best to kind of be informed before you purchase your health insurance. That was a short and sweet story.
You just gave me a reminder of a good hack for people. So this can work depending on the timing, but if you're arriving in the next few months, you're going to need winter coverage immediately. But if you're planning to arrive next summer and you're not planning to go to the ski hills in the first few months, and you believe that you might be eligible for the provincial health plan in your jurisdiction that you travel to, that's one of the hacks, that you can avoid winter coverage if you will have winter coverage through your provincial health plan in time. So sadly, winter coverage is a high risk addition, but just depending on the timing, I think we've listed that in the article. There's a few hacks just to be conscious of. So yeah, we share a lot of those tips to think about, because there are certain things that you're covered under provincial and your private health insurance, but remember that repatriation is one of the critical ones, and there are a lot of great benefits to having a strong private health plan.
Yeah, I really want to just jump in quickly as well and say, note that Rory said provincial coverage. I know there's a lot of IEC participants who they hear their friend did this and they got this, and they go forward assuming that, everything will be the same when I apply. That's not the case. Every province in Canada has its own healthcare system, and eligibility varies from province to province. So don't just go based on what your friend did. You need to carefully look at your province's specific requirements when you're working out whether or not that hack can apply, and based on your own timing.
I also had one other clarification with regards to the IEC health insurance. Yeah, it was mentioned that there are some countries that can do double participation, or they can participate twice in the program. When they're forward planning like that, if they're planning to do a second participation, should their IEC health insurance already cover that, even though it's may not be guaranteed, or do you just cover it the time for the duration that you're planning to do the first participation and then renew it after?
Yes, I can jump in. Like, I think, like, ultimately, say in the UK, where there's a repeat participation of 1 year after, you're arriving with a letter for a 2-year work permit, and you will have the 2-year health insurance to match that. You can deal with the additional coverage at the specific time you're going to the border. It would be extremely hard to buy things forward. And just remember, some people say it's hard to get full health coverage if you're in a 2-year jurisdiction. It's not. We recommend vendors to provide the appropriate health insurance for every jurisdiction. So just look at some of the recommended vendors, and arriving with a 1-year policy saying it wasn't possible to buy a 2-year is not meeting the requirements at the border. So just remember, at the border, it's very black and white. You either have the proper health insurance or you don't. And their job is to stamp your work permit for the expiry date of the health insurance that you carry.
Perfect. Thanks for clarifying. All right, with that, I guess we could move on to the Q&A portion. Again, thank you so much, Rebecca, Steph, and Rory, for breaking everything down. It's such a helpful overview of the 2025 IEC season, and also being able to give people a heads up on what they can do to prepare. And so we're just going to turn it over to our audience now. If you've got any questions about the IEC program, or maybe you're wondering what to prepare, what documents or costs to be mindful of, or you just want some general tips about working or settling in Canada, go ahead and drop them in the chat. I'll also just quickly review our live feed and just give a shout out to some of the people that have commented on here. First up, we have Frederico. He's from Portugal. He got an ITA for the IEC pool. His next goal was to work for Parks Canada, but now I'm trying to apply for a summer season next year. It's good to know. We have George just saying good day. Perfect. Good day to you too. And yes, for how to contact us directly, how do they contact us directly beyond the website?
We don't offer individual consultations. So if you're hoping to contact us directly with a really tailored response to your personal question, our philosophy is that we prefer to provide guidance to the masses. We want to bring the value that way. So we don't tend to have direct link out where you can, reach each of us individually. But I believe that there are contact forms for various questions that would be broadly applicable. Is that right, Rebecca?
Yes, correct. We have a contact us form on the website that you can go to and send questions that are kind of broad in nature.
Perfect. Thank you. Let me just quickly bring us all in the screen. And we have a first question from Indira. I want to know if I need a job offer before applying to the IEC program. Any takers?
I can take this one. So it depends on the program that you're applying to. The work and holiday, which is the most popular one, you do not need a job offer. So you can apply without a job offer. If you are looking for the young professionals or the co-op, you will need a job offer from a Canadian company before you proceed. Generally speaking, the work and holiday is more desirable because you don't need a job offer. It's what's referred to as an open work permit, which means it will not be tied to a company. So you can work for any company with some limitations. But obviously the downside is that it's much more competitive to get. So short answer is no. You don't need one to apply for the work and holiday IEC.
Perfect. We have another one from Zhao. After arriving in Canada and talk with an IRCC agent at the airport, check all your data on the work permit. I have a typo on mine and the agent said it was okay. And it took me 2 weeks to solve it. Oh, wow.
It's a really good reminder that before you leave the airport, you should, or the border, you should just review everything to make sure it's okay, because technically things can be fixed later on, but it's much more of a hassle. And then if you don't get it fixed, if it's something kind of you forget, you get into kind of living life in Canada, it'll be more hassle later on. So get it fixed if you can there and then.
Yeah, we did also cover a situation recently where somebody arrived at the airport. They said that they had the introduction letter, but they didn't say that they wanted to activate it. So they just entered Canada as a tourist and then didn't realize that you need like the separate work permit piece of paper when you leave the airport. So just note, like, the agents at the border will do the best that they can with the information, but they do make mistakes. So it is on you to be extremely clear. And if it looks like you're about to get waved through as a tourist without that separate piece of information, or that separate piece of paper, which usually requires going to a separate part of the airport. So if your process doesn't look like that, just let them know, like, I want to activate it. I don't just have it. I want to activate it. What do I need to do?
Exactly. Spell it out.
We have another question from Jessica. Do you have any tips for improving chances of receiving an invitation?
So I would say kind of what I hit on earlier, apply early. So really, if you missed out on this year, sign up for our newsletter. We'll let you know as soon as we have updates on the next IEC kind of cohort. As soon as it opens, you should be entering the pools. So in preparation for that, do your research, make sure you know what you need to do to get in. So you normally have around 4 to 6 weeks between the program opening and the first invitations. But it's just good to get it out, get it in. Then Christmas happens, you'll forget. Get it in as soon as it opens. Know exactly what you need to do. And if you are concerned that you're from a really oversaturated pool, so there is a lot of competition, try and look for a Canadian company. And I know that's easier said than done, but if you're from a country that offers the Young Professionals program, that is a lot easier. And so as a Canadian company's perspective, they don't really have to do that much to support your work permit. We have covered this recently. If you go through a little bit of our archives, we've covered how you approach an employer about the Young Professionals permit, because that might also be a great option for those from a very competitive pool.
Thank you. Next one is from Didier. Any tips to get a job? I have a PR and I'm already in Canada, IT specialist, but hard to land an interview.
Yeah, I can jump in there. I've been working as a recruiter for 14 years, so I would suggest, it is a tighter jobs market now. I find as the global economy wobbles, it's similar challenges in a lot of countries. But in a tighter job market, it's really key to differentiate yourself. First thing I would look at is your resume. Is it the best possible resume? We have a lot of detailed resume tips and templates available. Quite exciting, but we're working on an AI resume builder tool. It's not quite finalized, so I don't want to offer any timelines on that right now. But ultimately, we believe strongly that the resume that you use for your job hunt is the key foundation to your success. So we're trying to build easier ways other than giving people templates to actually help them adapt the content that they have. One of the key things I tend to focus on with all of my candidates for the construction sector is communicating in results. Communicating in generic duties is just listing what a web developer does. We want to focus on what results you have achieved when you look back on your projects and your previous roles. So that's the critical thing that people miss out on. Often it can be modesty that holds us back, but saying I'll wait till the interview, if the interviews aren't happening, as in your case, you need to focus more on, am I giving the best possible presentation or input to get me into that interview room? And remember, when you're in the interview, if you are speaking in results already, all you're doing is telling them more about the how. So it's kind of setting the agenda to be biased in your favor for an interview. So remember that a strong resume improves your interview chances. It'll also put you in a better career trajectory. It'll probably get you into a higher achieving role. And everybody wants to get paid more. So I often point out to people it can be the best paid part-time job you'll ever have, because putting 3 or 4 hard hours into learning how to communicate in quantifiable results, into formatting things the right way, having the attention to detail, having the gap analysis of understanding what our web developer or developer hiring manager is looking for in your case. Having all of those hard yards done will set you up, and it's never too late. Don't lose faith, because keep on moving with the same resume is not really a good recipe for success. So I would start referring to, you can download our employment guide. It has a kind of 6-step employment process on it. Check, am I doing all of these things? Am I networking? Have I made a list of all of my applications? Have I connected with people from my diaspora? Do I fully understand the gaps in the role? Why are people not contacting me? That's probably the biggest question that you need to address. And it's potentially that you're applying for jobs that you are not a fit for, potentially that you're not selling yourself good enough in terms of quantifiable results. There may be other potential gaps as well, but trying to do that analysis before you start the job hunt can be very motivating, but it's never too late to get on the right track.
I'd like to jump in just quickly as well. Rory is definitely the go-to for the resume and the technical bits. And I do know that this is easier possibly said than done, but considering locations that are a little bit less saturated can be really helpful as well. Canada's unemployment rate is typically a lot higher in, unemployment rate is typically a lot higher in Toronto and the surrounding regions compared to a lot of more regional areas in Canada. So if you take a look, I know like tech draws have stopped across a lot of Canada, but Alberta is still running them. I think there's still decent and more demand for potentially IT related roles in Alberta, and particularly rural Alberta. I do believe Calgary's unemployment rate is also ticking up. So you can look at the unemployment rates that are published by StatsCan and then that we cover every month and use that to inform your job search. So you can find a less competitive market and ideally land an interview in a role that way.
I think that's a really good point. I think sometimes people move to Canada and forget that it's like this massive country with very different, I guess, economic drivers. And so what's applicable to one area isn't necessarily applicable to others. And so kind of having that knowledge, again, is useful. To add on to this, this isn't applicable to, the comment because the individual had permanent residency status. But for those of you on IEC, you have the added kind of disadvantage of having to inform your potential employer about your status in Canada. And so the best thing you can do if you're job searching on an IEC permit is really be informed yourself about your status and have a plan for extending that stay. So don't assume that your prospective employer will know everything about Canadian immigration. That's really on you to be the kind of the knowledge base and point them in the right direction there.
Also, quick shameless plug. We've actually posted 2 relevant videos on our YouTube channel that touches on this. The first one is that we covered the best small cities in Canada for safety, jobs, and PR. I'll share that in the chat, but pretty much we're in this video, we're exploring the hidden gems beyond the bigger cities like Toronto, Vancouver, where it could be an option for you if you're looking for security, affordability, and you can still work towards your long-term immigration goals. And the second video is actually featuring Steph, where she shares that if she were moving to Canada in 2025, here's where she would live. And she gives a really good framework about what factors to consider before landing on a city. This will be part of your IEC preparation process. It's not just I qualify for this program, I'm making my way to Canada. There's a lot more research that needs to be done. And we break down what factors you would consider. So I'll be sharing that as well on the chat. Perfect. And before move on. Let's go to the next question from Andres. How long does it usually take to get a work permit after submitting an application?
So current processing times are around 7 weeks. It generally varies or fluctuates between 4 to 7 weeks. Just really high level though, that's once you've submitted your work permit application and given your biometrics. Just going back a bit, if you receive an invitation, you get 10 days to accept that invitation. And from that time you accept, you have 20 days to submit an application. So the processing period of 7 weeks does not include that time frame of you kind of prepping your application. So there's ways you can speed it up.
And then if you need to wait for a police certificate and you send them an email, or it's the web form, isn't it, afterwards saying, I haven't received my police certificate yet, here are my efforts. It's not going to, like, your submission isn't complete until you've got that in, you've got all of the documents in. So the clock starts running as soon as your process is done and IRCC has everything that they need to make the decision.
Up next, hi all. Do you have advice or job sites for securing work prior to arriving in Canada? I have my port of entry letter of introduction for my work visa, and I aim to move from Ireland next spring.
I think this really depends on the industry that you are working in. So we work with a company called Young'uns who place and kind of love IEC workers. They need labourers for containers, so you can check Young'uns out. Rory here also heads Outpost Recruitment, which places construction workers. So it really depends on the industry that you're coming from as to where your efforts would be best placed. I don't know if you can give us any more.
We have the jobs board as well.
Yeah, we also have our jobs board. Thanks, Steph. I just repeated what you said. Our jobs. We also have our jobs board that you can check out some of the latest roles that we have available from various partners.
Yeah. I think. Oh, sorry, you go, Rory.
No, I was going to say, I was just reading that it was about securing a job before you arrive. And like what I would highlight to people, securing a professional job can take, from start to finish, it can take 2 months in Canada easily. Even if it's like a red hot opening and you apply, it can take 6 weeks to get over the line. So if you're looking to secure a job before you arrive, it can be difficult because it probably means you need to start 3 or 4 months in advance. But then the challenge is, what employer wants to hire somebody 4 months in advance for a role? They're normally trying to hire somebody now. They're just really slow at doing it in Canada. So it can be a challenge. I often ask people and saying, well, would you be comfortable if you had 2 or 3 opportunities that you knew were going to evolve into jobs? And that might be the trade-off that you might have to be willing to make. That if you had conducted, or if you're engaged with 3 or 4 different opportunities before you get on the plane, that could be a huge win in your case if you're looking for a professional role. I get that question a lot from people, that it's really hard to give your notice in your current role without knowing if you're going to find a role in Canada. But just remember, the timeline, it can be longer, and sometimes it can be hard to secure a role in advance, But I'd encourage people to start putting out your resume, the right quantifiable outcomes, on your resume. Putting it out 2 to 3 months in advance can kind of set you up to be on track to find something when you arrive or within an arrival, The other challenge as well is that you often don't want to start work immediately. You might want to give yourself some time to travel, give yourself the time to meet companies in person. So there's a few kind of aspects of that job, that question that might be worth exploring, because sometimes with a company, it might be better to have it down to 2 offers, and then you arrive in whatever city you want. You go meet the 2 companies. You go, have a coffee with your boss in person, meet the team. That might encourage a better long-term decision from you as well. So just remember, why do I want to secure it before I might arrive? What's the need I'm trying to solve? And then kind of maybe meeting the needs of the employers as well, that they mightn't want to hire too far in advance, and just understanding that there might be a trade-off to say, maybe I have 2 or 3 opportunities that I know one of these will work out, that I'm going to be a success in Canada. Sorry, Steph, I know. I hope I didn't distract you.
No, all good. I was just going to say one of the advantages of the jobs board as well is that those employers typically do know that they'll be advertising to people who may have temporary status. So there's no guarantees, but you may find jobs that are like slightly more temporary status friendly.
Just quickly sharing the link to our jobs board for those of you that want to check it out. Let's move on to the next question. This seems to be a 2-part question from Ray. So thank you guys for the helpful information. I was wondering, for me, the goal is to live in Canada permanently with my partner. So we're exploring all the ways I can get into Canada. I'm in the IEC pool, applying to jobs for work permit, and will also go down the spousal visa route after we marry soon. I'm wondering how it works when doing multiple paths like this, like if we get married while I'm a year into IEC. Oh, I think you're on mute, Rebecca.
So these multiple paths, we like to refer to it as like plan A, plan B, and plan C. And it's really useful to have various different plans when you're working out your immigration strategy, because in case one doesn't work out, you've got a backup. So you can pursue multiple different avenues, but you've got to remember, if one is successful, you have to withdraw other ones. Based on the information that we have, I think, Ray, you were from Scotland, so the UK program is very competitive. If you don't receive an invitation this week, you'll have missed out for 2025. 2026 will open in December. You want to submit your profile again to the 2026 pool as soon as it opens. Try your luck there. If you marry, I'm going to assume a Canadian from this, the information that you've provided. Spousal sponsorship, they can sponsor you from within Canada or outside of Canada. That really depends on your partner's status. So it's a bit more complicated, but that's a very good option if that's available to you. You also mentioned applying for jobs for a work permit. I'm just going to remind you at that point, then maybe you want to consider the young professionals route versus a classic LMIA work permit, a labour market impact assessment work permit. If you're eligible, that would be a much better option for both you and your potential employer in Canada. So you want to research that as well. But as for what's best is what's successful. So you want to kind of attack all of them, enter the IEC pool under the young working holiday, when it opens. If you do end up getting married, or if you are in a common law relationship already, look into your spousal sponsorship routes. In some cases, a work permit is available, but it really depends on the category you're applying under. It's a bit more complicated than kind of just saying outright, this is what it is. And then if you're not successful in the working holiday, consider the young professionals if you do get a job offer from a Canadian company. So it's not a case of which ones I should focus on. It's having a plan for all of those scenarios, because the reality is Canadian immigration requires plan A, plan B, and plan C. So when plan A doesn't work out, you have plan B to fall back on.
Yeah, I think it's worth mentioning, I came to Canada on a 2-year IEC, and I met my partner very early in that process. And my plan A was express entry with Canadian experience, with federal skilled worker first, and then Canadian experience class. And neither of those worked out for me. And I ended up going the spousal route. I did notice in your language, you said, if we get married. If you want to get married and you're at that stage of the relationship anyway, great. But you do not need to get married to have a spousal visa in Canada. I was sponsored by my common law spouse. We're still not married many years on. And yeah, it's not an essential part of it, but you will want to start looking very early at what your next pathway is and what you need to prove to make sure that that pathway can work for you. So yeah, you'll want to start looking at what the spousal sponsorship actually entails, and start taking that proof. You'll need the photos, you'll need letters and so on. So that applies regardless of if you're doing express entry, like whatever your PR plan is. But from the outset, have a plan, have multiple plans, and be working your way towards the documentation for all of them.
Yeah, that's basically what Canadian immigration is now. It's very hard to say I'm going to do this and it works out. So just being informed and working towards all of them simultaneously is the best approach you can take.
Perfect. The next question is from Jonathan. So I'm looking to move to Canada via the ICT route, and I hope to progress to PR. I have 2 offers, one within Canada and one in the USA. Will I be better with the Canadian business regarding PR?
I can take this one. So ICT, I'm guessing, is intercompany transfer. So you're working for a company and you want to be transferred to the Canadian office or the US office. So we can't comment on US immigration. I wouldn't be able to tell you how easy it is to get PR status in the US. I can say to you that it's not necessarily easy in Canada right now. No matter what kind of your background, PR status in Canada is not guaranteed. What you could do is have a look at your options prior to making that decision. So there may be various routes available for you if you work in Canada. Which province would you be destined to? Have a look at some provincial programs available. Have a look at the express entry system, whether you qualify for an immigration program. If you do, how you rank. Things like that will give you an idea of how you might fare if you move to Canada. I can't give you any guidance on the US aspect of things, though.
He did add more context to say that he works in a global group who are both in Canada and USA-based company, but in Canada work-wise may be a better work fit for me, but not for PR.
No. So I would just take the time to map both out. If PR is your final, if you want to stay permanently in either country, map both out of which currently offers the best chance of that, knowing that things can change and will change probably in the 2 years, 3 years it's going to take you to gain that status.
Perfect. And also, Steve or Sturv got back to us saying that he is a software engineer. So,
perfect.
To know, we have just a thank you note from Ray. Pretty overwhelming, but it's slowly getting more manageable to understand, plan, and move through. All right. We do have a couple more questions. Maybe I'll read through some of the common questions that we get, and maybe some members of the team can answer them. So first up, any insider tips for improving your chances of being invited? I think we have covered this earlier.
Mm-hmm. Rachel wasn't listening.
Sorry, I was reading through it and I'm like, I think we already covered this question. I'll move on to the next. So what documents do people often forget or submit incorrectly?
Well, I think this is a really good question because it's very easy to think of your IEC program not as an application. And the reality is it is an application to the Canadian government. So what you submit right now will go with you for the rest of your applications. And it should be kind of treated with that amount of seriousness. It's very easy to kind of say, oh, it's just an online form. The reality is whatever you submit now has to be, should be accurate, should be truthful, and will follow you in any application you make. Some of the what's the word I'm looking for? Common mistakes I see in IEC is as part of the application, you have to list your work experience. That work experience has to appear on your resume. You also have to submit your resume. IEC is one of the few programs where you have to submit a resume. Often there is entries on your work experience that don't appear on your resume and vice versa. Make sure that the information across all different touch points are accurate and consistent. So if it's mentioned one place, mention it in the corresponding place. make sure all the documents that you need are uploaded. It's not necessary for IICC to tell you the documents that you need. It's for you to know which documents you need based on your circumstances. What else is there? If you want to work, oh, they're all coming out. Sorry. If you've got a pen and paper, someone stop me if it gets too much.
I did want to say I've seen a lot recently where people, I think it's usually in the context of study permits, but where they didn't disclose earlier experience and then want to claim that experience later on for Canadian immigration purposes through express entry usually. So is that the case for IEC as well? Like, are agents potentially going to be looking at their resume 2 years from now when someone's applying for express entry and being like, hey, you didn't tell us about this during your IEC application?
I think there's different motivations. Often for a study permit, that's done on purpose because they think it's more likely to increase their chances if they don't disclose specific work experience. But it can absolutely cause complications later on if you fail to disclose something that you later rely on. Oh, I sound like I'm reading someone's rights. It can be a problem later on if you don't mention something that you would like to be considered in the future. It's less likely to be malicious in an IEC permit, but that doesn't make a difference. Your intent isn't necessarily taken into consideration. So it's really best to kind of, if in doubt, mention it. If you're concerned about something, then you should absolutely speak to an immigration representative who can kind of help talk you through that concern and look into your options. Yeah.
Perfect. We'll have maybe the last 2-3 questions and then we can wrap up because we're near the hour. So maybe another question here is that, are there any restrictions on self-employment or remote work?
So if you're working on the working holiday program, then no, you can work. You can work in most occupations. There is a few exceptions. But if you're looking at what's best for you to stay permanently in Canada, you might need to be a bit more strategic about your work options. So if you're trying to get Canadian experience, self-employed work experience is probably not what you want to go for. You want to be on payroll with a Canadian company. So yes, you can do them. Whether you want to or whether they're in your best interest to do them is a different story. If you are on the young professionals or a co-op work permit or another closed work permit, a closed work permit being having an employer listed as someone you can work for, then you can only work for that employer that's listed.
We have another question from Ray. Are you able to elaborate on job applications not making it past bots? I've sent many applications and emails and haven't heard a single thing back. So now I'm trying to contact more directly.
Yeah, I can comment to that. Everyone can hear me?
Yeah, you have.
Yeah. My screen froze, sorry. So my suggestion, this may seem a bit bizarre, but my suggestion here is the problem is you're applying to jobs boards. To me, that's just, it's a lack of networking, you know? You got to remember that hundreds of people apply to public jobs boards every day. I would use them for research and then try and network your way to a job. If you're not hearing back, that's exactly the problem with jobs boards. You don't get feedback. You know, people can't take time to give 3 lines of feedback to 200 plus applicants. So my solution for Ray is to think about, can I network my way to this job? You know, can I try and figure out who the hiring manager is for this job, or who the HR person is? Can I build a direct contact? Can I go to physical events, or if I'm still remote, can I do some online networking and research better who the right person is? Is there someone in my diaspora that I could reach out to that works at that company that might be willing to meet me? Is there just a random person that looks helpful, you know? So those are some suggestions. It's very demotivating. to not hear back from jobs. They look like live jobs. Sometimes they're there collecting resumes. Sometimes they're there for an LMIA application. You rarely get feedback from jobs boards, so the key is avoid the jobs boards. Is my challenge.
I think it's also a good idea to optimize your resume for. It's called an ATS. That is the robot that reads resumes before they get into the hands of HR a lot of the time. So yeah, do a little bit of reading into like what an ATS system is looking for. It's generally just stuffing your resume full of keywords that the robot is looking for. So that can be really helpful. It's tricky to make it seem like you're writing this without trying to just appease the robot, because eventually a human will see the resume that you've sent in. So keep that in mind. And yeah, I think you mentioned LinkedIn as well. I actually don't know if I've told the team this before or not, but the job I had before I worked for moving to Canada, I got from a post that I wrote on LinkedIn. I had somebody else comment on that, and then him and I started chatting, and then that led to the role that I was in before moving to Canada. So people often optimize for, what employers will be looking for on LinkedIn, but don't hesitate to put yourself out there. Like, go comment on random posts from people within your industry. Just start like chatting away, and you never know what will come of that. I certainly wasn't looking for a role, and it ended up happening. So yeah, LinkedIn optimization is not just making yourself look good, it's putting yourself out there.
All right. Thank you, everyone, for your questions. I think that's our time for today. So thank you again for coming, to all of you watching our live stream and like tuning in, and also for submitting really thoughtful questions. We hope you got a lot out of today's webinar. As you can see on your screen, we have left 3 QR codes for you today. So the first one goes to the Moving to Canada job resources. The second one connects you directly with a Scotiabank advisor, and the last links to the Scotiabank StartRight Program. And once again, we just like to thank Scotiabank for supporting today's webinar. Of course, don't hesitate to reach out to one of their advisors if you're curious about, or if you're curious to learn more about Scotiabank's products. They can walk you through your options and help you get started on the right foot. And also, as a quick note, as you see on the slide, there's an important disclaimer related to Scotiabank. So just please take a moment to review the information and keep it in mind if you're exploring their products and services. Now, before we, fully wrap up, are there any last tips or words of wisdom that you'd like to impart to our viewers before we head off? Maybe starting with Rebecca.
I would say sign up for our newsletter. The team, specifically Steph, works really hard at making sure the content on the newsletter is great. Ray, you had mentioned that you read our newsletter and came across an email about the information not making it through to the systems. We really do try and cover all different types of information that you're going to need. And especially as we kind of gear up now to wait for the 2026 program to open, that would be a really useful, or it's going to be a really useful resource for many people. So sign up for our newsletter, and good luck. Immigration to Canada is honestly, I've been in this industry for 15 years and it's really tough right now. There's been times in the past where it's been tough. It's particularly kind of challenging right now. So it's something that you really have to go after and have those plan A's, plan B, plan C's, and just really try and set yourself up for success from day one. Yeah, that's it. And bye. Thank you.
I'll jump in there. I was going to just grab a pun from that Scotia slide, actually, to start right. To me, that's the critical thing. As a recruiter, I get to follow people very closely in their journey, and I take a lot of pride in getting things right from the start is critical to your success in Canada, right? And that's whether it's your bank, whether it's your health insurance, whether it's finding a job, whether it's going to settling in and exploring the place. There's tons of research to gather, but try to think of getting things right the first time instead of cutting corners and making rash decisions, saying this job will do. I haven't heard back from any other company, instead of finding a job that's going to keep you motivated and tempted to stay in Canada long term. That's the biggest thing I see on the employment thing. The people that don't prepare well, they find a job all right, but they find a job and they end up switching jobs in 6 months and then making another rash decision, and then their career hasn't moved forward in Canada. So their natural reaction is, oh, Canada doesn't have opportunities for me. So just remember, are you adapting to how things are done in Canada or expecting Canada to adapt to you? And that's kind of the big giveaway that or takeaway that I recommend. If you start right and you find the right products and services and the right job to keep you in Canada engaged long term, it's very likely you'll be tempted to stay then because things are going well for you. So it's all down to your research and preparation.
Thanks, Rory.
I guess my tip would, it does lean a little into something we didn't get many questions about today, but just finances when you're coming to Canada. IEC, I guess it has a relatively low proof of funds threshold. I believe it's 2,500 Canadian dollars still, Rebecca, is that right? Mm-hmm. I know it can be so hard to save up money, especially when you're young and getting started in your career. But arriving just with an adequate financial cushion is so important if you want to stay in Canada long term, especially. If you are just coming and, it doesn't matter when you go home or if you run out of money, there's a bit more leeway. But if you really are hoping to settle down and make Canada your home, I think saving a little bit above the proof of funds threshold could be a really good move for you if you're able to do that. And I guess if not, then just getting a job as soon as you arrive. It might end up being a survival job that doesn't help you necessarily with what you're ultimately hoping to do staying in Canada. But just be ready that there is a very real financial reality behind sort of the allure of the working holiday and other IEC permits. So arrive ready and with enough money.
Perfect. Thank you, everyone. All right, I guess that wraps up today's live Q&A. Thanks again to everyone for tuning in, and we'll catch you in the next live chat. Bye, everyone.
Have a good one.